All right, let's welcome back to Straight Fire. I love these guys who start their own shops, break away from the mainstream, do their own thing. So Tyler Dunne, we've had him on before, a prominent NFL writer, decided he's going to start golongtd.com, and he is dominating this Substack. Had a massive piece that we talked about here on the pod about Caleb Williams last week, and then we saw some of it come to fruition in the opener. So Tyler Dunne, talk to me. Your thoughts on Caleb Williams' debut against the Vikings?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you, J Mac. As always, thanks so much. Hope life is good. Yeah, I feel like there were a lot of coaches from that 2024 Bears team watching the 2025 Bears and saying, "Well, that's what we had to deal with in terms of guys motioning off rhythm, off timing,
Mm-hmm.
throws being off. Just the operational stuff was really lacking, and that's really what they experienced day one of OTAs through training camp, through the regular season, and it never really got better. I mean, we can get into a million different anecdotes, but I guess the one that pops to mind for me right now is the Saturday walkthrough before they played those Lions, Ben Johnson's Lions, late in the year. And Caleb Williams, I was told, just flubbed 4 of 8 play calls, right? Like motioning the wrong guy, plays being backwards. It was a disaster. And they're thinking, wow, it's still this bad late in the season. And then what did Caleb Williams do? He played well enough for Ben Johnson to want the job. He threw for 300 yards, 2 touchdowns. And I mean, you saw some of that juxtaposition in week one. You saw him complete his first 10 passes. You see him with these Houdini escapes. I mean, he's
Yeah.
got physical ability, athleticism, unlike most of the position. That throw to Roma Dunze was marvelous.
Oh
But
yeah.
it's the basic, it's the boring stuff that you need to sustain long term to be a
Mm.
successful winning quarterback in the NFL.
According to Pro Football Focus, he had two big time throws that were graded out. He had zero turnover worthy plays, which is nice. But he seemed to be plagued by like he thinks he can make every throw and he just can't, especially on the run. Do you think he's even capable, Tyler, of being a drop back in the pocket, go through read one, read two, make the play? Do you think he's capable of being that after 2 years of playing kind of off script?
Man, I really don't know. I think with Ben Johnson, he's got a shot. I think Ben
Yeah.
Johnson is one of the smartest offensive minds in the sport. I mean, you could see it, right, J Mac? You could see
Yeah.
receivers open down the field. There's DJ Moore, hit him, touchdown. It's there on a silver platter. So I think the opportunity will be there for Caleb Williams. But I don't know, man, because at USC it was a lot of runaround stuff,
Mm-hmm.
improvisation, creativity, and he's out there on the West Coast. I live here in Western New York, and I did not see him down in and down out. Like most of the country, I kind of consume Caleb Williams in 5 minute highlight reels, right? And it just seems like this is Patrick Mahomes light. And of course, this is where the game's going. Of course, you're going to have to make plays off script. And I think we kind of got, we all kind of got drunk on that kind of quarterbacking as Mahomes is becoming one of the greatest ever. But I tell you what, man, you talk to the coaches that were around Caleb Williams, and and this is where they're at fault too. Like they neutered their own playbook. They
Well,
took out checks. They took out audibles. They go to a basic ready set go. They tried to simplify it to the extreme to the point where he's clapping before the ball snapped, and these pass rushers know what's coming. Like it's kind of mind blowing. So you could go that route. You could try to make it Caleb friendly, but that's kind of the trap you might fall into. I think Ben Johnson's playing it right. I think you do have to load him up with your offense, right? You're making 13 million a year to fix the Chicago Bears. You've got the power. Run your show, and if the quarterback, whether it's Caleb Williams or anybody, can't keep up, you find a new quarterback at some point.
So what's that learning curve? You give him the full season because it feels like the signing of Bajent maybe was a gentle nudge, like, hey, we think we got something here as a backup. Maybe he's better for my system. Hey, Caleb's on a short leash. If he is awful week 6, maybe we pull him and start Bajent. I don't. Do you think that's in the cards, or are we saying, hey, there's a learning curve? I know Ben's been with the team since February or whatever. But the reality is they took zero snaps in real football games. I'm sorry, preseason doesn't count. So it's one game, that's not nearly enough to judge him.
It's one game, right? And I get it. Week one overreactions, we all
Yeah.
fall victim to it. But one football game is like 10 baseball games. I mean, it is huge. Like We should overreact to an extent. I mean, and these coaches know, their butts are on the line. They want to
Yeah.
run their show. They know they're dialing up great plays, and they've got players in the right position. They did a great job over the offseason on the offensive line, stuff like that. I think that Bajan signing is interesting, though. And I don't think we're reading into it too much to connect dots. When we hear Ben Johnson like effusively praise Tyson Bajan as a professional, as
Mm.
somebody who just clocks in, clocks out, and grinds and knows the offense. I mean, this is what those 24 coaches were telling me too. That they loved Tyson Bajan. I mean, he had every answer to every question inside of those meetings when Caleb really didn't say much at all in those meetings and at
Mm.
times was on the wrong page completely. So, yeah, I think that signing is basically what the Bears of 2024 tried to do when they lost to New England 19-3. If you remember, the Hail Mary
Oh,
against Washington goes down.
yeah.
They get crushed by Arizona 29-9. Then they lose to a bad roster, a bad Patriots team 19-3. And that's really when the blame game started because, Caleb Williams is outside of the huddle. He's getting the play call sent in and he's taking a little extra. I think a lot of the teammates in that huddle thought that Shane Waldron was taking his sweet time sending the play in when really that play call is coming in and Caleb is just kind of processing it at a slow rate. They get
Mm.
up there, everything's discombobulated. Anyways, Matt Eberflus told his staff that next morning, nobody's getting fired, and we're also going to incorporate Tyson Bagent into practice. Not necessarily 50-50 reps, but once and for all, we're going to challenge Caleb Williams, give
Yeah.
him a little competition. Like let's see if we can light a fire under him after they basically coddled him from day one in OTAs. And then what happened the next morning? Shane Waldron gets fired, and Ryan Poles, I was told, kiboshed the whole Bayesian plan, which, by the way, players wanted him in there too. Like players wanted
Mm.
the backup quarterback to play. But the GM, and I think a lot of GMs would do this if they have the power, would say, hell no. So that idea was just crinkled up, thrown in the trash. And now it's a new staff, and I think that Ben Johnson has power that Matt Eberflus never really had. So if it gets to that point, like let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. I'm with you. Like Caleb Williams needs a few more games, I would think,
Mm.
in this offense. Like he'll have some runway here, but I think you can connect dots that this coaching staff loves Bajan.
Mm, that's not great, especially for Caleb. There were some pieces, there were some notes in your article that jumped out, like Caleb straight up just walking away from coaches while they're talking to him. In all your reporting, you covered what Packers, Bill, you covered a lot of teams. Do you recall anything like that from a second year unproven quarterback? Now, if you tell me Peyton Manning, an all time great, was just sick of hearing from a coach and walked away, I get that. It was a little surprising and jarring to hear Caleb just walking away from a coach who's yelling, "Get back here, you MF," or whatever.
Yeah, that shocked me. It really did. And I heard that from several coaches that said they would try to coach him up, tell him to do something differently. And there were like 4 or 5 specific examples shared from these coaches where Caleb Williams just turned and walked away. And the most prominent example of that would be that Seattle game, Thursday night, late in the season, when Thomas Brown, hard nosed, old school, he's got 5 games left in that season to try to prove himself as an interim coach. It's just an unwinnable situation for anybody at that point. It was too little, too late to really change those atmospheric conditions that were in place since OTAs. But he tried. He got on Caleb, and Caleb just kept walking. So yeah, I think it was shocking to a lot of them, like that dynamic. It just felt unlike anything that these coaches had ever been around, but players as well. I think that he was telling receivers how to run their routes, back to the summer, and that didn't sit well with some of those veteran receivers. The word that comes up a lot is entitlement. So
Yeah.
yeah, he came in as the first NIL superstar. It was different how the Bears drafted him. They more so recruited Caleb Williams than interviewed Caleb Williams, convincing him to play for them. So they didn't really go through much due diligence at all. I talked to scouts in those draft meetings. They weren't looking at negatives. They weren't openly discussing, look, can this play style really work in the NFL? Look, is he really going to grind and really work? That kind of stuff was just skimmed over. Meanwhile, you're laughing at Drake May's film, like literally laughing him off the screen, not really talking about Jaden Daniels in a serious way. That to me was probably even more shocking than Caleb Williams doing anything is just what led to Caleb Williams. And we get into all of that in part 2 of the series.
I can't wait for part two. So let me ask you about this, and this is a tough one. Um, when you're reporting on someone or something, and it's a dicey thing, you don't know if you want to put it out there in the public forum. You can maybe talk around it or hint at it. Many people in the Chicago area are like, "Man, I read that article. It was unfair," and there was I don't know if speculation or talk around, but Caleb Williams' sexuality seems to be like a hot button issue. I don't know if it's just from painting the nails at one time or if he still does that, but I'm just curious. Is that anything you do or don't want to talk about from the article?
Yeah, I don't really care about any of that. I mean, I don't think these coaches care. The players don't care.
Right.
None of that stuff. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, yeah, he's into fashion. He's into that kind of stuff. There's a coach who told me, look, he's into this. He's got interests off the field, and if he wins, it'll be celebrated. If he loses, then maybe it does become a distraction at some
Mm.
point. But it is funny. I saw like I used the term sachet, like he when he walks away from a coach. That's kind of how it was described to me like, by these coaches that he would just kind of sachet away and walk the other direction. And yeah, some of the Bears fans didn't like that. But look, when you write 27,000 words,
27,000. Oh
that's
my
what it ended up
gosh.
being. And you're trying to be descriptive and things. I guess I can see how things can get a little misconstrued there. But yeah, that I don't think that is a factor into anything. More if we're talking off the field stuff, it's more so okay when he goes home. Is he looking at his film? He didn't do much of that last year, right? Jane Daniels is there in Washington where the virtual reality, he's speeding the game up to 1.75 times speed. He's done that since his last year at LSU. Caleb Williams, what I was told by a source, Brian Poles was interested in getting the same VR system when he heard about it. They decided not to get it because they figured Caleb Williams wouldn't really use it. That's a problem on
Hmm.
many levels. So I think that, you know, that other stuff, there's a lot of noise around it. I don't think it really matters at all.
Um, it's also tough to just wonder, but like the Caleb camp, as you're reporting this and getting ready to go, did they want to talk to you at all on off the record? Do you feel like they're still a unified front? Because the Seth Wickersham piece that mentioned they never wanted to go to Chicago in the first place. It almost feels like, hey, all their worst fears were coming true, even though they did get Ben Johnson.
It's the thing. I mean, when you really do learn more about the Chicago Bears, you kind of empathize with Caleb Williams' camp and see, oh, well, there's a reason they were a little concerned about going to Chicago. There's a reason this team has had bad quarterback play for most of a century plus. The problems are very, very deep rooted there. Man, I don't know. Like I don't know where this goes. I mean, I did, and to answer your question, yeah, I reached out to the Bears for Ryan Poles and Caleb Williams because they're two very central figures in all three parts. They weren't made available. That's fine. And look, there's a lot of press conferences out there, a lot of stories out there. All the parties that are involved with the Bears now have talked plenty. What we haven't really heard is the story from the coaches from 2024, like that their reality. I believe that does matter to get
Yeah.
that perspective, as does the perspective of those in the draft meetings that saw this go down in part two. So yeah, he's a complicated prospect because there's a lot of talent. Maybe this can work with Ben Johnson. Look, I live here in Buffalo. Like I said, Josh Allen completed 52% of his passes as a rookie. Joe Burrow went 2-7-1 before he tore his ACL. Patrick Mahomes played 62 snaps. So you can't just say a rookie is going to be one thing or the other right out of the chute. But there's a lot of alarm bells going off right now
Yeah,
when it comes to number one overall pick Caleb Williams.
Tyler, it feels like a whiff of Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield. I can't even put Zach Wilson in their class because those two guys have rebounded. But this does come from like the COVID era athlete where everything was disrupted, right? You didn't get the normal college experience. And I'm just wondering, do you think that has anything to do with it? Or is it like, hey, well, look at Bo Nix. He's fine. Look at Jaden Daniels. He's fine. Is that the counter?
That's a great question because in that second part, I talked to a general manager for another team that got to know all of these quarterbacks in the 23 draft and the 24 draft. And this GM told me he kind of went into this thing a little worried about the NIL athlete, the NIL
Mm-hmm.
quarterback. What's it going to be like sitting down with these quarterbacks who have already made a lot of money, who are already kind of their own brand. And he was shocked, really, by his interactions with a Jaden Daniels, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young. I mean, go right down the list. Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy. He kind of takes you through all of these conversations and no, like there was one guy would be an alpha, one guy genuinely loved ball, one guy it was clear it was a multiplier, could get everybody in that locker room to buy in. And then he got to Caleb Williams and basically said it was unlike anything he had experienced in his scouting life. It
Jeez.
wasn't really an interview. Caleb Williams didn't approach it like an interview. It just felt strange from the body language to how he answered questions to kind of rambling around without really getting to a point. It could be a case of, look, Caleb Williams knows he's going to number one overall and isn't really taking these other interviews seriously. Maybe there's some of that too. But I think there is all of these GMs looking for franchise quarterbacks kind of have to sit through an entirely new world with what they're getting from quarterbacks out of college. And I'm not going to be an old curmudgeon middle-aged man and say, oh, they're all making too much money, they're not hungry. Because no, a lot, like this GM said, he was blown away by Jane Daniels and some of these guys. But it is true that you got to find something other than talent. Talent alone it isn't going to take you very far in the NFL. You've got to have something to you inside, and these teams, they've got to ask hard questions in those draft rooms. And the Bears just did not ask those hard questions at all leading up to the Caleb Williams pick.
All right. He is Tyler Dunne, golongtd.com. 27,000 words. That is unbelievable, man. Congrats. Substack is fun. Do you have your next target, or are you, sorry to use the word target. That almost comes off mean, like you're going after him. But do you have your next subject? Any ideas on where you want to go? Because I remember you had a huge one on McDermott that rattled Buffalo to its core. Or do you not want to give it away?
You know what's wild too? That McDermott series. Talk about. I would not have expected this at all. But like a couple months later, I just sat down with Sean McDermott at the combine and we got to know each other. And we didn't even talk about the story. And I've been back at One Bills Drive interviewing him. I was in his office for a one-on-one at one point during the playoffs last year. And I think he evolved as a human and as a coach in many positive ways. So it just goes to show, like, you know, people can change, people can learn, people can grow. That it's human nature. And yeah, go long. I think my mission is to just go beyond the mainstream press conferences, whatever teams are kind of pushing. There's a whole other NFL out there. And as I was reporting on this Bears series, a coach kind of described the real NFL as Game of Thrones. He's like, there's a whole Thrones world behind the scenes that people have no clue about on Twitter X, just not privy to at all. So as an independent journalist who can kind of parachute into different places, and, you know, I don't take any gambling money, or not that there's anything wrong with that. Sorry. No ads, no sponsors. You know, I love the fact that I can just kind of, you know, think for myself, and, you know, I don't give a damn about Twitter mobs at all. Like, bring it on, whatever. So I think there's a value to that when you can just kind of think freely. And whether it is those palace intrigue stories, which are, I love diving into those and talking to 32 different people like we did for this Bears series. But I also love just sitting down with a player over dinner, seeing what makes him tick. We've done a lot of those kind of stories. You know, a Julian Hill, maybe a player nobody's ever heard of. Listen to this podcast, a Dolphins tight end. We hung out down in Miami. It blew my mind. I mean, here's somebody that grew up homeless in Fayetteville, North Carolina, living floor to floor, sleeping with the cockroaches, seeing like grisly sights on a day-to-day basis. And now he's down there basically saving lives. I mean, helping with this program where they get trafficked kids who have seen even worse things. And so, I don't know. I think real, raw football is what I gravitate toward in any sense.
Love it. Well, I don't love that last part, but Tyler Dunne, golongtd.com. Thanks a lot, buddy.
Thank you so much, man.